Welcome back and welcome back to the Horror Message YouTube channel. Welcome back to episode number 20 of my controversial album covers series, where we tackle into album covers in the metal, rock, metal spectrum that are controversial, were controversial, or have the possibility of eventually being controversial sometime in the near future. But yes, guys, episode 20. I cannot thank you guys so much for the reception for every single episode I've done so far. I still can't believe we've done this series for 20 episodes, and I'll say it once, I'll say it again. There's still so many album artworks I have yet to discuss. So there's an album artwork you want me to discuss that you think has been controversial. Let me know down in the comments, and I'll get to it in the near future. But for the title of this video, I'm really excited because this album in general is in my top 5 greatest favorite albums of all time. Of course, I am talking about the almighty Iron Maiden with their third studio album and their most, I guess, legendary album, The Number of the Beast, released on March 22nd, 1982 by EMI Records. I'm not gonna get into the history of Iron Maiden. I mean, if you know my channel, if you're a metalhead, you know who Iron Maiden is. Probably the biggest British band next to Black Sabbath and Judas Priest, who has come out of the other pond. One of the most influential metal bands next to a Metallica and Black Sabbath. What more can I say about Iron Maiden has been said before? So a lot of people are gonna be shocked that Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast was at one point controversial. Now, I said at the beginning, I'm a huge fan of Iron Maiden. I had the opportunity to see Iron Maiden back in 2019 on their Legacy of the Beast tour. It was my first time seeing them live, and oh man, I fucking lost my shit when I saw Iron Maiden live, because they're in my top 5 favorite bands of all time. And this album, I love it with a passion. I'm to the point I have the Funko Pop of, The Number of the Beast. Of course, I have the CD. And last but not least, people are gonna be shocked, I actually have the vinyl as well, which I'll say it once, I'm not a big of a vinyl fan, but there's some albums that I gotta buy the vinyl, just have it on display in my room. So yeah, for me to talk about this album, I knew I had to bring those pops into this video. But so Iron Maiden's The Number of the Beast, the songs in this album have been talked about to death, but Invaders, Trinity of the Dam, The Prisoner, 20 Education Avenue, the B-side, Total Eclipse, Run to the Hills, the title track, Total Eclipse, Gangland, and of course the epicness and probably their most famous song, their best song, and probably the greatest heavy metal song of all time, my personal opinion, Hallowed Be Thy Name. So the history of this album is kind of a transition, because after the success of Killers, the band wanted to move a different direction, and of course, Paul Di'Anno was mostly seen as more of a punk kind of, singer, and the band wanted to move in more metal kind of perspective. And of course, they decided to look for different vocalists, and of course, they came upon one Bruce Dickinson, formerly of the band Samson. And of course, he joined the band. He joined the band after they kicked, after they kicked Paul Di'Anno, which eventually Paul Di'Anno was able to have a successful solo career in his own right. And this will be the last album that, of course, the liquid Clive Barr will be in this album. After that, Nico McBrain would have taken the ranks in the later Iron Maiden albums. And of course, this album cover was created by none other than the legendary Derek Riggs, who has created, I think, every single Maiden album from the very first one until Fear of the Dark, and after that they've got other artists, but he is the primary. He pretty much created the vision of Eddie in the first Iron Maiden album till Fear of the Dark. So this album cover, of course, The Number of the Beast, originally this album cover was supposed to be created as the album cover for Purgatory, but of course the manager, Rod Smallwood, decided to kind of save that album cover for, of course, being The Number of the Beast. And then, of course, The Number of the Beast album has had some printings over the years, and you can kind of notice that this album cover at the beginning, originally, it was supposed to have the gray sky that has been released in, of course, the remastered editions of the album. But upon some printing errors, this album came upon with the blue and black sky in the album, which personally I think the blue and sky album artwork in the background kind of makes Eddie more pop into what it is right now. But the black and gray album background is kind of okay as well. And then, of course, as the time went on, this album eventually, of course, with the creation of Eddie kind of controlling the demon or Satan, and Satan kind of controlling the small Eddie. For a lot of people in other countries, was a pretty fucking cool idea. And I even like the part that Rick's kind of demonstrated that he kind of got the idea of a Doctor Strange comic book, which I've been trying to find that comic book. I don't know which one it is, but pretty much he said that the villain was kind of dangling Doctor Strange like he was the puppet, and the villain was the puppeteer. So that's kind of cool for that concept that Derek Riggs got inspired by Doctor Strange comic book to kind of help him create the Beast artwork. And you can see from the artwork, it's not really that much controversial compared to the other artworks I've talked in the past. This is probably the most PG or kind of safe artwork you can ever think of. So, why do you think this album cover became controversial? It didn't become controversial in Canada. It didn't become controversial in Mexico. It didn't become controversial in the UK. It didn't become controversial in Japan, in Germany, in Russia, in Portugal. It became controversial, and of course, the one state that you think it could be considered controversial, the United States. Of course, when it comes to Satanism and all that, quote-unquote Satanism, U.S. is kind of a state that's kind of iffy when it comes to the kind of religions. I'm just saying that, but, a lot of people, especially a lot of religious folks, kind of took offended that, this album cover promoted Satanism. It promoted people to buy this album and turn to Satanism and do all these evil things and become victimized and possessed by Satan and hell Satan and all that, which, I'm just gonna cut the chase. Nowhere in this album promotes Satanism. Maybe I'm lying, maybe the title track, maybe the entire concept of the Number of the Beast, but it doesn't tell you that you gotta worship Satan. I mean, it's just like kind of saying something so dumb. Like, even the band who was accused of being Satanists, they even mentioned they weren't Satanists. And there was usually an American audience that, to the point that evangelists on TV would like go into their TV shows and play the album backwards, saying they had some hidden messages, kind of like we did with Led Zeppelin's Sports, Stairway to Heaven. They had some hidden messages and all that bullshit. But it's one of those things that I find it weird that only in America, an album called Number of the Beast, with Eddie controlling Satan and Satan controlling a little Eddie or a person, could a lot of controversy in the States. And of course, when that happens, of course, there's some people who are gonna go and try to do whatever they can to make people not go buy this album. Which, it's funny that the majority of the articles that I've read, that a lot of religious folks went into the record stores, bought the albums, not to sell them, not to listen, but to burn them. Like, they would actually buy a shitload of copies from record stores, gather them up, and just put them on fire, like telling like, oh, we are vanquishing the evil, they're going out, no one can listen to this album ever again, when in reality they were helping the band with the record sales. So thank you for that, for helping Iron Maiden sell a lot of more albums in 1982 because of that debacle. But that's a different story. But I just find it amazing that Iron Maiden, of all bands, you might never consider controversial. Sure, there have been some things that you might be not agree with Iron Maiden, but to consider them like a controversial album cover, it's kind of crazy. Even the idea of me putting the Number of the Beast in this series alone kind of boggled my mind, because I'm like, I never thought this album cover was controversial. But then again, you gotta think of the concept of the time in 1982. This was barely at the beginning, or was around the rise, or around to start the idea of the PMRC and Tipper Gore, which eventually would give us the parental sticker years later, which they thought this would prevent people from not buying the album, when in reality, it kind of gave the albums more notoriety and start selling more albums. And that's why, for many reasons, I have that as the freaking on my thumbnails, as it right there on point, because I know once you click on it, you want to see what it is about. But The Number of the Beast, one of the most legendary albums you're ever gonna think. But it boggles my mind that even a professor has stated this album provokes power, passion, and music in the darker presents themes and images of the world. Which it kind of does, because how many album artworks back in 1982 in the early 90s promoted Satanism? Sure, you can say something like, probably something like Venom's Welcome to Hell, or even earlier, like maybe Black Sabbath Subtitle, or even a band like Coven, or I'm trying to figure out what was big in 1982 that was considered satanic. Maybe some of the artworks that I'm not thinking of. Maybe the early Witchfinder General album, something around those links, but nothing before Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast that I can think of besides, Black Sabbath and maybe Venom and Coven and also even Black Widow to some certain extent, or even Led Zeppelin to some certain extent in the 70s. But it never kind of show you Satan in front page. After Iron Maiden's Number of the Beast, you start seeing more Satan in your face, of course, with Slayer, eventually the whole death metal scene, black metal, and eventually all the genres that kind of popped up from that perspective. But The Number of the Beast is one of those legendary albums that even the story of how they made the album is fascinating, which I like the idea that Rod Smallwood was, I don't know if it was him or one of the producers, was kind of fixing his car, or the previous night he got run by nuns, or some nuns came in the road and his car got totally destroyed or something, and he took it to a shop to get it fixed. And of course the bill was 666 pounds, and it was like, nah, it's not with any coincidence. So it's kind of those weird things that The Number of the Beast, regardless of what people think, yeah, sure, some people think it's the most overrated Maiden album. I do see their points, but still, it's The Number of the Beast. I mean, what other album can you think of that has made so many sales? Even the album artwork, I've seen so many people. When I saw Iron Maiden in 2019 in San Antonio, there were so many people who had The Number of the Beast album artwork tattoo in their sleeves, in their legs, some on their chest, front and back. But I just find it amazing that an album that's been around since the 80s, back in 1982, still has the power to kind of make fans get loose into Iron Maiden and the lore and everything about it. That's why I said it so many times, it is my favorite Maiden album of all time, because it got me into the band, eventually got me into more new bands, and eventually into the thrash and black and death and so many other subgenres. But if you haven't listened to the Number of the Beast, what the hell have you been doing all your life? You gotta listen to this album right fucking now. And I still find it comical that who's really controlling who? Is Satan controlling 80, or is 80 controlling Satan? That's a question you gotta think of. And that does it for this video, guys. I hope you guys really enjoyed this new video. Like I mentioned before, I'm trying to think of ideas for the next 5 episodes I'm gonna do. I might take a short break the next week or so, because I'm gonna be out on vacation, so there might be a week that I'm not gonna do a video, maybe 2 weeks, depending on how I feel. So during the time, I'm gonna be brainstorming on new ideas, hours I want to tackle into the series. Thank you guys so much for all the reception I've been receiving for all these videos. I'm still trying to figure it out. Eventually when I reach episode 50 or episode 100, I might maybe rank all the artworks I've done so far and consider which one's like the top of the top, which I think you all know what number my number one might be. I mean, it was the first fucking video, but regardless of that, thank you guys so much for watching. Stay safe, everyone, and until next time, stay metal.